The wind howled through the red rock canyon like a wounded animal, carrying with it the scent of sage and dust. Thatcher Boone stood at the edge of his property, watching the sun sink behind the jagged Wyoming peaks. The scar tissue on his back pulled tight beneath his worn cotton shirt, a permanent reminder of the night everything burned. 3 years had passed since the fire. 3 years since Martha's screams had torn through the smoke-filled air. 3 years since he'd failed to save her from the flames that consumed their homestead. Courtesy of the Dawson gang's torches, the outlaws had wanted his land, his cattle, his life. They'd taken 2 of those things and left him with something worse than death: memory. His new cabin sat tucked against the canyon wall, built from weathered pine and stubborn determination. It was smaller than the old place, just 3 rooms and a lean-to for the horses. No curtains on the windows, no flowers in the yard. Martha had loved her garden, roses and wildflowers fighting the harsh Wyoming soil. Now only sagebrush grew where beauty once bloomed. You can't live like a hermit forever, Thatcher. The voice belonged to Clara, his sister-in-law, who'd ridden out from town with another basket of preserves and unsolicited advice. She meant well, but her presence scraped against his solitude like sandpaper. "I manage fine," he replied, not turning from the view. "You call this managing?" Clara's boots crunched on the gravel as she approached. "When's the last time you came to town for anything besides supplies? When's the last time you spoke to anyone who wasn't selling you flour or feed?" "Tuesday." The lie came easy. It had been 2 weeks. Clara sighed, the sound heavy with frustration and pity. Martha wouldn't want this. His jaw tightened. "Martha's not here to want anything." "No, but she made me promise." Clara's voice softened. "Before she died, she made me swear I'd see you didn't waste away out here. Said you were too good a man to die alone." Thatcher finally turned, his gray eyes hard as the granite peaks. "Some promises can't be kept." Clara studied him, the premature silver threading through his dark hair, the deep lines carved by sun and sorrow, the way he held himself apart even when standing close. "There's another way," she said carefully. "I saw an advertisement in the Cheyenne paper, mail-order brides, respectable women looking for husbands out west. No, just hear me out." I said no. "You need help here, at minimum. Someone to cook proper meals. Keep house. It doesn't have to be about feelings." She chose her words like stepping stones across a river. "Think of it as hiring help that doesn't cost wages." Thatcher's laugh was bitter as alkali water. "You want me to buy a woman? Don't be crude. It's an arrangement. Plenty of men do it. Women back east want opportunities. Men out here need partners. It's practical. It's foolish." Clara set her basket on the porch rail with more force than necessary. "What's foolish is you dying out here alone, letting this place fall to ruin, letting Martha's death mean nothing." The words hit like a slap. Thatcher's hands clenched at his sides. But Clara pressed on. She wanted children, Thatcher, a family, life continuing. "Not this monument to grief you've built. Get out." His voice was quiet, dangerous. Clara gathered her skirts but paused at her wagon. "The advertisement is on your table, along with writing paper and postage. Think about it." She left as the last light faded, wheels creaking down the rutted trail. Thatcher stood in the gathering darkness until the cold drove him inside. The cabin felt emptier than usual. He lit the oil lamp and saw Clara's gifts on the rough pine table: newspaper, paper, ink, stamps. The advertisement was circled in black ink. Matrimonial news. Respectable ladies seek correspondence with marriage-minded gentlemen in Western territories. Christian women of good character. Skilled in domestic arts. Write to... He crumpled the paper, then smoothed it out again. Read it once more by lamplight. Outside, a coyote howled, the sound echoing off canyon walls. For weeks, the advertisement haunted him. He'd burn it, then rescue it from the flames. He'd start letters and tear them up. What would he even say? Widower with scars seeks woman who doesn't mind ghosts? Winter came early that year, snow piling against the cabin walls. The isolation grew heavier, He found himself talking to the horses more, to Martha's memory, to the wind. When he caught himself setting 2 plates for dinner, he knew Clara had been right about one thing: this couldn't continue. On a December night, with snow falling soft as ash, he finally wrote, "To the matrimonial news. I am a rancher in Wyoming Territory, age 32, seeking a practical woman for marriage. I have 160 acres, a sound cabin and livestock. I am not looking for love or affection, merely a helpmate who can cook, clean, and maintain a household. I can provide safety, shelter, and respect. No romantic notions necessary. If interested, respond to T. Boone, General Delivery, Sage Creek, Wyoming Territory." He posted it before he could change his mind. Riding through a blizzard to town, the postmaster, old Samuel Hayes, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. 3 months passed. He'd almost forgotten about the letter when a response arrived, water-stained from its long journey. "Dear Mr. Boone, your honest advertisement spoke to me. I am Catherine Mills, age 26, formerly of Pittsburgh. I seek a new start and am not given to romantic foolishness. I can cook, sew, keep house, and handle livestock. I require only shelter and purpose, if agreeable. I can arrive by Union Pacific to Sage Creek Station. Enclosed is my photograph, awaiting your reply. K. Mills." The photograph showed a plain woman with serious eyes and dark hair pulled severely back. No beauty, but steady-looking, practical, safe. He wrote back with train fare and instructions. Set a date in early spring, April 15th. Began preparing the cabin, clearing the extra room, buying cloth for curtains he didn't know how to make. When April arrived, bringing meadowlarks and mud, Thatcher found himself both dreading and anticipating the appointed day. He told no one except Clara, who smiled smugly and offered to loan her good dishes. "It's not a celebration," he'd insisted. "Every new beginning deserves decent plates," she'd replied. Now, standing on the platform as the noon train whistled its approach, Thatcher pulled at his collar. He'd worn his best shirt, the one saved for funerals and nothing else these past 3 years. The train wheezed to a stop, black smoke billowing into the clear spring sky. Passengers disembarked, a drummer with his cases, 2 miners heading to the silver camps, a family with too many children. Then, when he'd almost decided Catherine Mills had changed her mind, a young woman stepped onto the platform. She wasn't Catherine Mills. Where the photograph had shown a sturdy, plain woman past first youth, this girl couldn't be more than 22. Where Catherine's hair had been dark, hers was the color of prairie honey. Where Catherine's face had been broad and practical, this one was delicate as china, with eyes the gray-green of sage leaves. She wore a simple brown traveling dress, carefully mended at the cuffs. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched a carpet bag. But it was her expression that stopped him cold. Beneath the attempted composure was naked fear, hope, and something else. Desperation. Their eyes met across the platform. She took a step forward, then another. "Mr. Boone?" He found his voice. "You're not Catherine Mills." The girl, for she was hardly more than that, swayed slightly. Please, let me explain." "There's nothing to explain. You're not the woman in the photograph. You're not the woman who wrote to me." His voice came out harsher than intended, disappointment sharpening his words. "Whatever game you're playing, I want no part of it. It's not a game." Her voice was barely above a whisper. She glanced around the platform as if expecting someone to appear and snatch her back. "Please, just 5 minutes. Let me explain." "Miss, I don't know who you are or what you want, but—" He stopped, noticing for the first time the bruise partly hidden by her high collar, faded to yellow-green, but unmistakable. His eyes traveled to her hands, seeing the too careful way she moved, the slight favoring of her left side. She saw him notice and raised her chin, pride warring with desperation. "My name is Evelyn Grace. I know I'm not who you expected. I know you have every right to put me back on that train. But please," her voice cracked, "please don't." Something in those sage-green eyes made him pause. He'd seen that look before, in wounded animals, in soldiers after battle, in his own mirror for months after the fire. It was the look of someone who'd run out of options. The eastbound train wouldn't come for 3 days. The platform was beginning to draw curious stares from the townspeople. Thatcher made a decision that would haunt him in the days to come. "My wagon's outside," he said gruffly. "We'll discuss this at the ranch, but I make no promises." Relief flooded her face, quickly masked. "Thank you." He took her carpet bag, surprisingly light for someone supposedly starting a new life, and led the way to his wagon. Behind them, the train pulled away with a mournful whistle, leaving Evelyn Grace stranded in a wilderness of hope and deception, with only a scarred rancher's reluctant mercy standing between her and whatever she was running from. The 20-mile ride to the ranch had never seemed longer. The wagon wheels found every rut and stone on the journey back to the ranch. Evelyn Grace sat rigid beside him, her hands folded so tightly in her lap that her knuckles showed white through the worn kid gloves. She hadn't spoken since they'd left town, and Thatcher hadn't pressed. The silence stretched between them like a taut wire. When they finally reached the canyon, she drew in a sharp breath. "It's beautiful," she whispered, the first words in 20 miles. Thatcher glanced at her, surprised. Most people found the red rocks oppressive, the isolation daunting. But she was looking at the towering walls with something like wonder. "It's remote," he said flatly. "Nearest neighbor is 8 miles. Town's 20. "Good." The word slipped out before she could catch it, and she flushed. He pulled up beside the cabin, and she climbed down before he could offer assistance. Another surprise. Catherine Mills's letters had emphasized her genteel upbringing, her need for proper courtesies. This girl moved like someone used to fending for herself. "You'll stay in the barn," he said, grabbing her carpet bag. "There's a room in the loft. Was meant for a hired hand, but it's clean and dry." She nodded without protest, following him across the yard. The late afternoon sun caught in her hair, turning it to spun gold. He looked away, irritated at himself for noticing. The barn smelled of hay and horses. He led her up the ladder to the loft room, sparse but adequate, with a narrow bed, washstand, and single window overlooking the canyon. "There's water in the well. Privy's out back. You can take your meals in the house." He set down her bag, already turning to leave. "We'll discuss your situation in the morning, when the eastbound comes through." "Please." She caught his sleeve, then dropped her hand as if burned. "I know I've deceived you. I know you have no reason to trust me. But I can work, I can cook, clean, tend house, everything I promised in the letters. Letters you signed with another woman's name." She lifted her chin. "Everything else was true. My skills, my willingness to work, my circumstances." "Your circumstances." He studied her face, noting the shadows under her eyes, the way she held herself carefully, as if expecting a blow. "Running from a husband? The law?" "No husband." Her voice was steady. "And I've broken no laws. Then why—" "Please." The word came out ragged. "Can we not? Tonight? I've been traveling for 5 days. I just need—" She swayed slightly, exhaustion finally showing through her careful composure. Against his better judgment, Thatcher found himself softening. "There's bread and cold beef in the kitchen. Help yourself. We'll sort this out come morning." He left her there, standing in the shaft of dusty light from the window. Back in his own cabin, he paced the floor, calling himself 10 kinds of fool. He should have put her on the next stage to Cheyenne. Should have never answered that advertisement. Should have— A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. He opened the door to find her standing there with an empty plate. "Thank you for the food," she said quietly. "Where shall I wash this?" "I'll take it." He reached for the plate, but she'd already spotted the pile of dishes in the dry sink. "Oh." Her eyes widened at the mess. Without asking, she moved to the stove, checking the water reservoir. "Do you have soap? A dishpan? You don't need to—" But she was already rolling up her sleeves, revealing more fading bruises along her forearms. She caught him looking and quickly pulled the sleeves down. "I'll just wash these and go," she said. "It's the least I can do." He should have stopped her. Instead, he found himself getting the lye soap, pointing out where things were kept. She worked efficiently, quietly, and within an hour, his kitchen looked better than it had in months. "The stove needs blacking," she observed, drying the last plate. "And that curtain rod is about to fall. I could fix it tomorrow if you have wire." "There won't be a tomorrow. When that stage comes." She turned to face him fully then, and in the lamplight he could see the desperate courage it took for her to meet his eyes. "What if I told you I'd die if you send me back?" The words hung in the air between them. Thatcher felt an uncomfortable twist in his chest. "That's a bit dramatic, don't you think?" "Is it?" She pulled a folded paper from her pocket, hands trembling slightly. "This is the marriage contract Catherine Mills signed, before she sent that photograph, before she wrote to you. She married someone else, someone who paid her travel expenses to come west as his bride." Thatcher took the paper, scanning the legal language. "Then where is she now?" "Dead." Evelyn's voice was flat. "She died on the journey. Lung fever. I was traveling on the same train, and I helped nurse her before she passed. She gave me everything. Her clothes, her papers, her ticket to Sage Creek. And you decided to take her place. I had nowhere else to go." The words came out in a rush. "The man I was running from, he has money, influence. He would have found me in any city. But out here, with a new name, a husband to protect me. I'm not your husband. No." She straightened her shoulders. "But you advertised for a wife. A practical arrangement. You said, no romantic notions necessary. I can be that wife, Mr. Boone. I can be Catherine Mills or Evelyn Grace or whoever you need me to be. I just need—" Her voice broke slightly. "I just need somewhere to belong." Thatcher set the contract on the table, his mind working through the implications. A strange woman with a false identity. Running from God knew what kind of trouble. Every instinct screamed danger. But then he looked at her standing there in his clean kitchen, lamplight catching the determination in her gray-green eyes despite the fear. When was the last time anyone had washed his dishes without being family or paid to do it? "The barn," he said roughly. "You'll stay there tonight. Tomorrow we'll see." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you. You won't regret—" "Don't make promises you can't keep. Miss, what should I even call you?" "Evelyn," she said softly. Just Evelyn. The days that followed fell into an uneasy rhythm. She rose before dawn, had coffee ready when he came in from checking the stock. Breakfast appeared without fanfare. Biscuits, light as clouds. Eggs, cooked perfect. Bacon crisp. She worked steadily through the day, washing, mending, scrubbing floors that hadn't seen a mop in years. She kept her distance, speaking only when necessary, moving quietly around him like a ghost. At night, she retreated to the barn without complaint, though he'd begun to hear sounds that troubled him, muffled sobs, the creak of floorboards as she paced. Once, a strangled cry that might have been from a nightmare. The fourth night brought rain, a cold spring deluge that turned the yard to mud and set the canyon walls weeping. Thatcher lay in bed listening to the drumming on the roof, trying not to think about the barn's leaky corners. A crash of thunder made him sit up. Through his window, he could see the barn door hanging open, banging in the wind. He pulled on boots and a slicker, cursing under his breath. He found her in the loft, huddled in the driest corner, burning with fever. The roof had given way in 2 places, soaking half the room. "Evelyn." He knelt beside her, feeling her forehead. "Too hot. Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, glazed and unfocused. "Don't let him find me," she whispered. "Please, I'll be good. I won't run again. There's no one here but me." He gathered her up, blanket and all. She weighed next to nothing. "I'm taking you to the house." She struggled weakly. "No, you said, the barn." "Forget what I said." He carried her through the rain, her fevered mumbling lost in the storm. Got her inside and laid her on the sofa near the stove. Her clothes were soaked through, and he faced a dilemma that would have scandalized proper society. Necessity won. He peeled away the wet outer layers, trying not to look at what he shouldn't. That's when he saw them. Scars across her back, some old and white, others newer. Finger-shaped bruises on her upper arms. The evidence of systematic cruelty that made his own scars seem clean by comparison. He dressed her in one of his shirts and wrapped her in dry blankets. Then built up the fire, found the whiskey and mixed it with hot water and honey, coaxing it between her lips. She drifted in and out of consciousness, sometimes calling for her mother, sometimes begging someone named Charles to stop. He sat with her through the night, cooling her fever with wet cloths, keeping the fire steady. Near dawn, the fever broke. She opened clear eyes to find him slumped in the chair beside her. "Mr. Boone," her voice was hoarse. "What? Why am I—" "You took ill. The barn roof leaked." She tried to sit up, realized she was wearing his shirt, and clutched the blanket higher. "I'm sorry. I'll go back." "You'll stay where you are." He stood, joints protesting. "I'll make some broth." "I can do it." "You'll rest." His tone brooked no argument. "We need to talk, you and I, but not until you're stronger." He made the broth, poorly, and watched her sip it slowly. Color returned to her cheeks, though she wouldn't meet his eyes. "You saw?" she said finally. He knew what she meant. Yes. He was supposed to be respectable, a businessman from Philadelphia. My guardian thought it a good match. She set down the cup with trembling hands. "The first time he struck me was our wedding night." Thatcher's hands clenched, but he said nothing. "For 2 years, I endured it. What choice did I have? The law gives a husband rights. Society looks the other way. But when he started talking about his needs for an heir, about the things he would do to ensure it," she shuddered. "I knew I'd die if I stayed." "So you ran." "Took what money I could find and bought a train ticket west. I thought I could disappear in California, find work as a governess or shop girl. Then I met Catherine on the train." A wan smile touched her lips. She was so excited about her new life, her practical rancher who wanted a business arrangement, when she died. Evelyn looked up at him then. "Is it wrong that I saw God's hand in it? A door opening when all others had closed." Thatcher thought of his own doors, the ones that had closed with smoke and flame, the ones he'd barred himself. "I don't know about God's hand," he said slowly. "But you can stay." Hope flared in her eyes. "Truly. Through summer. You work, I'll pay fair wages. Come autumn, you'll have enough to go wherever you please. And my husband? Let him come." Something dangerous flickered in Thatcher's gray eyes. "This is my land. I protect what's mine." She was quiet for a long moment. "I'm not yours, Mr. Boone." "No," he agreed. "But you're under my roof now. That makes you my responsibility." It wasn't the arrangement either of them had planned. But as the rain finally stopped and sunrise painted the canyon walls gold, it felt like something that might, possibly, work. Spring surrendered to summer in the canyon, bringing wildflowers and the constant hum of bees. Evelyn had moved her few belongings into the small room off the kitchen, a compromise that satisfied propriety while keeping her out of the leaking barn. They settled into a routine as careful and measured as a dance between strangers. She rose with the dawn, had coffee ready when he came in from morning chores. They ate breakfast in companionable silence, then went their separate ways. Him to the range and stock, her to the endless work of maintaining a frontier household. Evenings found them sharing supper, sometimes talking of practical matters, more often letting the quiet speak for itself. "You never told me about your life back east," Thatcher said one evening as she darned his socks by lamplight. It had been 6 weeks since her arrival, and curiosity finally got the better of him. Evelyn's needle paused. "There's not much to tell. I was raised by my mother's cousin after my parents died, educated to be a proper lady, married at 19 to a man chosen for me. No brothers? Sisters? No one." She resumed her stitching. "What about you? Have you always lived in Wyoming? Came out from Missouri after the war. My brother and I thought we'd make our fortune in cattle. He stared into his coffee cup. He died of fever the first winter. I stayed anyway. Too stubborn to admit defeat. Martha used to say, "Martha was your wife." It wasn't a question. She'd seen the carved stone on the hill behind the house, had kept the wildflowers there watered without being asked. 3 years, he said quietly. We had 3 years. That's more than some people get. Her voice held a sadness that ran deep as the canyon. Was she from Missouri too? Boston. Can you imagine? Proper Bostonian lady following me out to this wilderness? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Her father disowned her for it. Said I'd be the death of her. Evelyn set down her mending. He was wrong. You weren't the one who... She stopped, seeing his face close off. I should have been here. Should have fought harder. Against how many men, with the house already burning? She leaned forward. You would have died too. Maybe that would have been better. The words hung between them, stark and honest. Evelyn stood abruptly, moving to the stove. I'll make fresh coffee. I don't need... Tell me about her. She kept her back to him, busying herself with the pot. Not how she died, how she lived. Thatcher was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she sang while she worked. Couldn't carry a tune in a bucket, but she sang anyway. Planted flowers in the middle of drought. Insisted they'd grow if she just believed hard enough. And somehow, they did. She sounds wonderful. She was... He rubbed his face. Suddenly tired. She would have liked you. Evelyn turned. Surprised. You think so? You're practical like she was. See what needs doing and do it without fuss. But there's something else too. He frowned, searching for words. You don't let the hardness win. Most people out here, they get bitter. You've got every reason to, but you're not. Aren't I? She brought him fresh coffee, her smile rueful. You don't know what I think in the dark. Maybe not, but I see what you do in the daylight. Their eyes met and held, something shifting in the space between them. Then Evelyn looked away, returning to her mending. But the silence that followed felt different. Warmer, somehow. The next morning brought trouble in the form of Zeke Harlan from the neighboring ranch. Thatcher found him examining the fence line, his foreman and 2 hands flanking him like buzzards. Boone. Harlan's smile was all teeth and no warmth. Heard you got yourself a woman. What I have or don't have is no concern of yours. Now, that's where you're wrong. Everything in this valley concerns me. Harlan shifted in his saddle. Especially when it involves harboring fugitives. Thatcher's hand moved casually toward his rifle. You calling my guest a fugitive? Just saying there's talk. Woman shows up out of nowhere, no family, no history. Makes a man wonder what she's running from. Makes a man mind his own business, if he's smart. Harlan's eyes narrowed. You always were too proud for your own good. Boone, that pride cost you once before. Shame if it happened again. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Thatcher stepped forward. Get off my land. Public road, Harlan said mildly. But we'll be moving along. Just remember, I've got eyes everywhere. That pretty little thing steps wrong. I'll know about it. They rode off laughing, but Thatcher stood watching until they disappeared over the rise. When he returned to the house, he found Evelyn at the window, face pale. I should leave, she said. I'm bringing you trouble. You heard? Enough. She wrapped her arms around herself. He's the kind of man who... I know what kind of man Harlan is. He's been trying to push me out since the fire. This is just another excuse. He hung his hat by the door. You're not going anywhere. But if he starts asking questions, making inquiries back east, let him ask. Thatcher moved closer, seeing the fear she tried to hide. Evelyn, look at me. She raised her eyes to his, and he saw tears threatening to spill. You're under my protection now. Whatever you were before, whoever you're running from, that's done. You're Evelyn Grace of Sage Creek, Wyoming. That's all anyone needs to know. You can't fight the whole world for me. Don't need to. Just Harlan and anyone else fool enough to threaten what's—" He caught himself. "To threaten someone under my roof." She studied his face, then did something that surprised them both. She reached out and touched his hand. Just briefly. "Thank you." That night, she made his favorite stew and cornbread that melted like butter on the tongue. They talked more than usual. She told him about learning to cook from the household staff, sneaking into the kitchen as a child. He shared memories of his brother, stories he hadn't told anyone in years. When the evening grew late and she rose to go to her room, he found himself wishing she'd stay. Just to talk, he told himself, just for the company. The next weeks brought a shift neither acknowledged, but both felt. They began working together more. She helped him mend harnesses while he fixed the chicken coop she wanted. He taught her to shoot, patient with her clumsy first attempts. She taught him to bake bread properly, laughing when he forgot the salt. One afternoon, a summer storm caught them in the high pasture while checking on the cattle. They took shelter in a line shack, soaked and shivering. "Here," Thatcher shrugged out of his coat, wrapping it around her shoulders. "You'll freeze," she protested. "I'm fine," but his teeth were chattering. She scooted closer on the rough bench, pulling the coat around both of them. Better to share. They sat hip to hip, listening to rain hammer the tin roof. She smelled like lavender soap and sunshine, and Thatcher found himself noticing the way wet tendrils of hair curled against her neck. "Evelyn," he said roughly, "this isn't— I'm not looking for—" "I know." Her voice was soft. "Neither am I." But she didn't move away, and neither did he. When the storm passed and they walked back through the dripping grass, something had changed. They were careful not to touch, but the awareness sparked between them like lightning looking for ground. That Sunday, Evelyn surprised him by suggesting church. It would look proper, she said, stop some of the gossip. He hadn't been since Martha died, but he hitched up the wagon. She emerged in her best dress, still plain but pressed neat, and he found himself staring. In sunlight, with her hair pinned up proper, she looked like the lady she'd been raised to be. The congregation's reaction was immediate and mixed. Some women welcomed her warmly, starved for female company. Others whispered behind gloved hands, especially when she couldn't produce details about her fictional past as Catherine Mills. "Let them talk," Clara murmured, swooping in to claim Evelyn's arm. "Lord knows they've got nothing better to do." After service, the banker's wife cornered them. "Miss Mills, is it? How lovely that dear mister. Boone has found a housekeeper. Though it must be quite improper, just the two of you out there." "Indeed," Evelyn replied smoothly. "That's why we're planning a wedding, aren't we, Thatcher?" He nearly choked on air, but managed to nod. The banker's wife retreated, deflated of gossip ammunition, in the wagon going home. Evelyn started to apologize. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have—" "It was smart." He interrupted. "Gives us time while they wait for a wedding that won't happen. Won't it?" The question hung between them. Thatcher kept his eyes on the horses. "That's not what you came here for." "No," she agreed quietly. "But plans change." They rode the rest of the way in silence, but it was the kind of silence that said more than words, full of possibility and fear in equal measure. At the ranch, he helped her down from the wagon, his hands lingering at her waist a moment too long. "Evelyn," he began. "Don't—" She stepped back, though her eyes were soft. "Not yet. We both have too many ghosts." She was right. He knew. But that night, he lay awake thinking about the way she'd felt against him in the storm, the way her eyes had challenged the gossips at church. For the first time in 3 years, the empty place beside him in bed felt less like a memorial and more like a possibility. Outside, coyotes sang to the stars, and somewhere in the darkness between his room and hers, something that might have been hope began to take root. The trouble started with Emmett Walsh, proprietor of the stage depot and keeper of more gossip than freight. He cornered Evelyn at the general store while she selected fabric for new curtains. "Miss Mills, isn't it?" His eyes glinted with malicious curiosity. Funny thing, I've been running this depot 15 years, know every soul who passes through, but I can't recall seeing you before April. I arrived by train, Evelyn replied evenly, examining a bolt of blue calico. That's so, 'cause I checked the passenger lists. Professional interest, you understand. Don't recall any Catherine Mills. Perhaps you missed it. She moved toward the counter, but Walsh blocked her path. Or perhaps Catherine Mills never made it to Wyoming. His voice dropped. See, I got a letter from my cousin in Nebraska. Says a young woman died on the westbound train. Lung fever. Pretty thing with dark hair. Traveling alone to meet her intended. Evelyn's hands tightened on the fabric, but she kept her voice steady. How tragic. If you'll excuse me. Also says another woman helped nurse her. Young, pretty, honey-colored hair. Left the train at North Platte, then disappeared. Walsh leaned closer. Remarkable coincidence. Wouldn't you say? I wouldn't say anything. Mr. Walsh, except that you're preventing me from completing my purchases. Mrs. Morrison, the shopkeeper's wife, bustled over. Emmett Walsh, stop harassing this poor girl. Don't you have stages to run? Walsh tipped his hat, smile sharp as a blade. Just making conversation. Good day, Miss Mills. Or should I say, you should say good day. Thatcher's voice cut through the store like a whip crack. He stood in the doorway, hand resting casual on his gun belt. And then you should remember that spreading lies about a lady is a good way to lose teeth. Walsh's face flushed. Now, Boone, you're just leaving. Thatcher stepped aside, opening a clear path to the door. Now! After Walsh scurried out, Evelyn found her hands shaking. Thatcher took the fabric from her, paid Mrs. Morrison, and guided her to the wagon. He knows, she whispered once they were moving. He suspects. That's different. Is it? He'll write to people, ask questions. Let him. Thatcher's jaw set hard. Walsh has been Harlan's creature for years. This is just another attack. But that night, Evelyn barely touched her supper. She stood at the window, watching the road as if expecting riders to appear. Tell me, Thatcher said quietly. All of it. If trouble's coming, I need to know what form it'll take. She turned from the window, wrapping her shawl tighter. His name is Charles Pemberton. His family owns half the shipping contracts in Philadelphia. My guardian owed them money, substantial debts from failed investments. My marriage was part of the settlement. You were traded to clear a debt. Dressed up prettier than that, but yes. She sank into a chair. Charles seemed charming during our courtship, attentive, generous. I thought myself fortunate. Her laugh was bitter. My wedding night taught me otherwise. Thatcher's hands clenched, but he stayed silent. For 2 years, I endured it. The bruises were always where they wouldn't show. He was careful about that. But when he started talking about an heir, about the measures he'd take to ensure one, she shuddered. I knew I wouldn't survive it. So you ran. Took what jewelry I could sell. Bought a ticket west. I thought I could disappear in San Francisco. Find work. She met his eyes. Then Catherine died, and she pressed her papers into my hands. Take them, she said. Take my chance at happiness. How could I refuse? And now Walsh threatens to expose you. Charles will come, she said with certainty. Or send men. He doesn't love me. I doubt he's capable of love. But I'm his property in his eyes. He won't tolerate the insult of my escape. Thatcher stood, pacing to the fireplace. The flames cast shadows on his scarred hands. You could have told me from the start. Would you have let me stay? He considered lying, then shook his head. Probably not. Then I'm glad I didn't. She rose, moving closer to him. These months, they've been the best of my life. Is that pathetic, to find happiness in a lie? It's not a lie. He turned to face her. The work you do, the person you are here, that's real. But I'm not Catherine Mills. I'm not your mail-order bride. No, he agreed. You're Evelyn. The way he said her name, soft, almost reverent, made her heart catch. They stood close enough to touch, the firelight painting gold across her features. "Thatcher," she breathed. "We shouldn't—" "I know." But he raised his hand to her cheek anyway, thumb brushing the delicate bone. "God help me, I know." She leaned into his touch, eyes fluttering closed. For a moment, they swayed toward each other, pulled by forces stronger than propriety or sense. Then a log popped in the fireplace, breaking the spell. Evelyn stepped back. "I should go. Stay." The word escaped before he could stop it. "You know I can't. Not tonight. Not like this." She wrapped dignity around herself like armor. "But thank you for believing me, for not throwing me to the wolves." After she retreated to her room, Thatcher remained by the fire, wrestling with feelings he'd thought buried with Martha. It was different. Martha had been sunshine and laughter, while Evelyn was moonlight and quiet strength. But the pull was just as strong, maybe stronger for being unexpected. The next morning brought a new complication. A stranger rode up as they finished breakfast, well-dressed, with the soft look of a man who hired others for hard work. "I'm looking for Miss Evelyn Granger," he announced without preamble. "I have reason to believe she's in this area." Thatcher stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand. "No one here by that name. Perhaps she's using an alias. Young woman, early 20s, honey-colored hair, gray-green eyes, quite pretty. Left Philadelphia in March. Lots of pretty women in the world. Mr. You'll have to be more specific." The man produced a photograph. "This is Miss Granger. There's a substantial reward for information leading to her return." Evelyn, listening from inside, recognized the photo, taken at her engagement party. Charles's hand possessive on her shoulder, though he'd been cropped out. Thatcher barely glanced at it. "Haven't seen her. Now get off my land." "I'm staying at the hotel in town," the man persisted. "If you remember anything—" "I won't." After the stranger left, Evelyn emerged, face pale. "That was Mr. Hartley, Charles's man. If he's here—" "Pack your things," Thatcher interrupted. "What?" "We're going to the line cabin. It's isolated, defensible. We'll stay there until he gives up and leaves. You can't abandon your ranch for me. Watch me." He was already gathering ammunition. "I told you, I protect what's mine. I'm not—" She stopped at the look in his eyes. Something had shifted overnight. The careful distance between them had crumbled. They loaded the wagon with supplies, Thatcher grim and efficient. But as they climbed toward the high country, Evelyn touched his arm. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why risk so much for someone who lied to you?" He was quiet for a long moment, navigating the narrow trail. Finally, "Because when you look at me, you don't see the man who failed to save his wife. You just see me. And when you look at me, I see the woman who brought my house back to life." He glanced at her, something raw in his expression. "Who's making me remember what it feels like to want to live, not just survive?" They reached the cabin as afternoon shadows lengthened. It was rough but solid, with a good view of the approach, while Thatcher secured the horses and checked sight lines. Evelyn made the space habitable, sweeping out dust, laying a fire, preparing a simple meal. That night, with danger circling below and stars cold above, they sat before the fire and talked as they never had before. She told him about her childhood, lonely despite luxury, hungry for real affection. He spoke of the war, the things he'd seen and done that had driven him west, seeking clean country. "I was different before," he said, quick to laugh, slow to anger. "Martha brought that back for a while, after she died." He shrugged. "Easier to be stoned than to feel. And now there's you." He looked at her across the flames, "Making me remember I'm not dead yet." "Charles used to say I was cold," she said quietly, "that I lacked proper wifely feeling. Charles is a fool. How do you know? We've never—" "I know," he said firmly. "I see how you tend the flowers on Martha's grave, how you sing when you think I'm not listening, how you touch everything, bread dough, laundry, garden plants, like it deserves gentleness." His voice roughened. "You're not cold. Evelyn, you're careful. There's a difference. She rose then, moving around the fire to sit beside him, not touching, but close enough to feel his warmth. I'm tired of being careful, she whispered. He turned to her, and this time neither pulled away. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, two wounded souls testing if touch could heal instead of hurt, then deeper, hungrier, full of months of denied longing. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn rested her forehead against his. What are we doing? I don't know, he admitted, but I'm done fighting it. Below in the valley, danger waited in the form of hired men and legal papers, but here in the firelight, with her hand in his and the vast Wyoming sky standing witness, Thatcher Boone felt something he'd thought lost forever, hope for a future that held more than ghosts and guilt. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought. Tonight, they stayed at the line cabin for 3 days, existing in a strange bubble outside of time. During daylight, Thatcher kept watch while Evelyn tended the small space, transforming it from a rough shelter into something almost like home. At night, they sat close by the fire, hands touching, learning each other through stories and silence. On the second evening, as purple shadows filled the valley below, Evelyn asked, "Do you ever regret answering that advertisement?" Thatcher considered, watching an eagle ride the thermals above the canyon. "I regret that you had to lie, that you came here out of fear instead of choice, but regret you being here." He squeezed her hand. "No, even though I brought danger to your door. Danger was already circling. Harlan's been looking for an excuse since the fire." His jaw tightened. "At least now I have something worth fighting for again." She studied his profile in the fading light, the strong lines softened by sunset. The gray threading through dark hair that spoke of trials survived. "I never expected this," she said softly. "When I took Catherine's papers, I thought I was just buying time, a place to hide until I could figure out my next escape. And now? She turned to face him fully. "Now I can't imagine being anywhere else." They kissed then, deep and sure, with none of the hesitation of that first night, when they finally drew apart, both breathing unsteadily. Thatcher rested his forehead against hers. "Evelyn, I need you to know, I'm not him. I would never, I know." She placed her fingers over his lips. "I've known that from the beginning. You're nothing like Charles, but you still flinch sometimes, when I move too quick or old habits." She caught his hand, placing it over her heart. "Feel that? Steady as stone. I'm not afraid of you. Thatcher Boone. Never have been." That night, with stars witnessing through the cabin window, they came together fully for the first time. It was nothing like her brutal experiences with Charles, all taking and no giving. Thatcher was gentle, patient, reading her responses like a map to hidden treasure. When old fears surfaced, he stopped, waited, let her lead until trust overcame memory. Afterward, they lay entwined on the narrow cot, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat strong and sure beneath her ear. "I love you," he said quietly, the words rusty from disuse. "Didn't think I'd ever say that again. Didn't think I could, but I do." She lifted her head to look at him, tears making her eyes luminous in the moonlight. "I love you too. Is that wrong? To find love while running from a marriage? That wasn't a marriage. That was captivity." He stroked her hair, marveling at its softness. This is choosing each other. World of difference." The third morning brought reality back in the form of dust rising from the valley trail. Thatcher spotted it first, 3 riders moving with purpose toward the cabin. "Get dressed," he said quietly, already reaching for his rifle. "Company coming." Evelyn was pulling on her boots when she recognized the lead rider through the window. "It's not Hartley. It's Sheriff Morrison." That was either very good or very bad. Thatcher stepped onto the porch, rifle casual in his hands. "Sheriff, little far from town, aren't you?" Morrison reined up, his weathered face unreadable. "Boone, Miss, he touched his hat to Evelyn, who had appeared in the doorway. Been looking for you too? Any particular reason? Got a situation in town. That fellow Hartley's been stirring up trouble. Says the lady here is a runaway wife. Claims he's got legal papers to take her back east. Evelyn's hand found Thatcher's arm. He covered it with his own, keeping his voice level. That's so. Thing is, Morrison continued, shifting in his saddle. Man's also been asking a lot of questions about the fire 3 years back. Seems to think there might be more to that story. Even rode out to talk to Zeke Harlan about it. The implication hung heavy in the morning air. Thatcher's grip on the rifle tightened. Sheriff, what exactly are you saying? Morrison met his eyes straight on. I'm saying that sometimes the law and justice aren't the same thing. I was there that night, saw what was left after the Dawson gang finished. Saw you near dead trying to get to Martha. He paused. Also remember how those outlaws ended up dead themselves, not 6 months later. Every last one, picked off neat as you please. Never could prove who did it, but I had my suspicions. Ancient history. Sheriff. Maybe, maybe not. Point is, this Hartley fellow's trying to trade information. Says he'll forget all about his interest in old crimes if Miss Granger comes along peaceful-like. She's not going anywhere with him. Thatcher's voice was flat. Final. Didn't figure she was... But here's the thing. Judge Palmer's coming through on Circuit Tuesday next. Man owes me some favors from the old days. If you two were legally married, would make Hartley's claims a lot weaker. Evelyn stepped forward. But I'm already... Charles and I were married in Philadelphia. Morrison's smile was sly. Were you now? Funny thing about marriages. Need proper documentation. And from what I hear, the lady who married Charles Pemberton was named Evelyn Granger. Lady standing here introduced herself as Catherine Mills, lately of Pittsburgh. Unless someone can prove different, understanding dawned. Thatcher looked at Evelyn, a question in his eyes. She nodded, hope and fear warring in her expression. Appreciate the advice. Sheriff? Thatcher said carefully. No advice here, just observing that Judge Palmer performs a nice ceremony. Tuesday, 2 o'clock, courthouse. Morrison gathered his reins. Oh, and Boone. Might be wise to come back to town before then. Show folks you've got nothing to hide. Man skulking in the hills looks guilty. Man going about his business with his intended bride looks like a citizen. After the sheriff and his deputies rode away, Evelyn sank onto the porch step. Could it work? Could we really? Thatcher knelt before her, taking her hands. Evelyn Grace, Catherine Mills, whoever you are, will you marry me? Not for convenience or protection, but because I love you and want to face whatever comes together. Yes, the word came out on a sob. Yes, but Thatcher, if this doesn't work, if Charles, then we'll face that too. Together. He pulled her into his arms. I lost one wife to violence. I won't lose another to fear. They returned to the ranch that afternoon, riding down from the high country like conquering heroes instead of fugitives. Word of their impending marriage spread through town faster than wildfire. Clara arrived the next morning with a dress. Was mine for my second wedding, she said, shaking out the green silk. You're taller, but I can let down the hem. Clara, I can't... Hush! Martha would haunt me forever if I let you marry her man in calico. Her eyes misted. She'd be happy. You know, she worried about him. At the end, made me promise to see he didn't turn into a hermit. As Clara pinned and stitched, Evelyn asked quietly, Did you know that I wasn't really Catherine Mills? Suspected? Clara's voice was matter-of-fact. The real Catherine Mills would have been a fool to leave whatever she was running from. But you've got spine enough to run towards something better. The remaining days passed in a blur. Thatcher reinforced the house's defenses while maintaining an air of normal routine. Evelyn baked and cleaned as if her life depended on it, which, in a way, it did. The whole town chose sides, most landing firmly in the camp of young love versus Eastern interference. Hartley grew increasingly frustrated, filing complaints with Morrison that went nowhere. The woman is a fraud and a runaway wife, he insisted. What woman? Morrison asked blandly. Only woman I know out at the Boone place is Miss Catherine Mills. His mail-order bride. You got proof otherwise? Tuesday dawned clear and bright. Evelyn stood before the cracked mirror in her room, hands trembling as she pinned up her hair. The green silk made her eyes look more gray than green. And Clara had been right. Martha would have approved. A knock at the door made her jump. "Come in." Thatcher entered, stopped short at the sight of her. "You're beautiful. You're not supposed to see me before. Too many rules already. Figured we could break one more." He crossed to her, pulled a small box from his pocket. "This was Martha's. I want you to have it." Inside was a simple gold locket on a fine chain. "Thatcher, I couldn't—" She'd want it worn, not hidden in a drawer. And she'd want it worn by someone I love. He fastened it around her neck, his fingers warm against her skin. "There. Now you carry both our pasts into our future." The ceremony was simple. A few words from Judge Palmer, promises made while holding hands and gazing into each other's eyes. When Palmer pronounced them man and wife, Thatcher kissed her like a man claiming his whole world. As they signed the register, Mr. and Mrs. Thatcher Boone. Hartley burst through the courthouse doors. "Stop! That woman is already married. I have papers." "What woman?" Judge Palmer asked mildly. "I only see Mrs. Boone here. Her name is Evelyn Granger Pemberton, and she—" "Can you prove that?" Morrison stepped forward. "Because I've got a whole town of witnesses who'll swear this is Catherine Mills from Pittsburgh. Unless you've got something that proves different." Hartley's face went purple. "This is conspiracy. I'll wire Mr. Pemberton immediately." "You do that," Thatcher said quietly. "And when he arrives, tell him he's welcome to visit. I'll be waiting." The threat in those simple words made Hartley step back. He stormed out, but everyone knew he'd be back with reinforcements. That night, as Evelyn lay in Thatcher's arms in their marriage bed, she touched the locket at her throat. "Do you think we've only borrowed time?" "Maybe." He pulled her closer. "But it's our time now, legal and binding. Whatever comes next, you're my wife. That changes everything." She lifted herself on one elbow to study his face. "No regrets?" "Only one." At her worried look, he smiled. "I regret those months of keeping you at arm's length. Waste of perfectly good time. I could have been loving you." "Then we'll just have to make up for it," she whispered, and proceeded to show him exactly how they might begin. Outside, wolves howled in the distant hills, and the wind sang through the canyon walls, but inside the lamp-lit cabin, two scarred souls had found their way to wholeness, and for tonight, that was miracle enough. The peace lasted exactly 9 days. Thatcher had just returned from checking the eastern boundary when he spotted the dust cloud. Too large for a single rider, too organized for casual travelers. He spurred his horse toward home, ice forming in his gut. Evelyn was in the garden, humming as she tended the late vegetables. She looked up at his approach, her smile fading when she saw his expression. "How many?" she asked simply. 6, maybe 7, still a few miles out. He swung down from the saddle, already calculating. "Get inside, load the rifles." She didn't argue, just gathered her skirts and ran for the house. By the time the riders crested the ridge, they were ready. Thatcher on the porch with his Winchester, Evelyn at the window with the Spencer repeater he'd taught her to use. Charles Pemberton looked exactly as she'd described, handsome in a soft way, with pale eyes that held no warmth. He rode at the center of his hired men, protected like the coward he was. "My dear wife," he called out, voice carrying across the yard. "What a chase you've led me on." "I'm not your wife," Evelyn replied from the window. "Check the courthouse records. I'm Mrs. Thatcher Boone now." Charles's laugh was ugly. "A piece of paper doesn't dissolve our sacred bonds. You're mine, Evelyn. You've always been mine. The lady says different." Thatcher said quietly, "That's good enough for me. You must be the fool she's deceived." Charles studied him with contempt. "Did she tell you she's prone to hysteria? That she invents wild tales of mistreatment? The poor creature isn't well. I've come to take her home for proper care. The only thing that made me hysterical was you," Evelyn called out. "And the only care you ever showed was making sure the bruises didn't show." "Lies." Charles's voice hardened. "You see what I mean? She's delusional. Now step aside, farmer, before someone gets hurt." Thatcher chambered around, the sound sharp in the afternoon air. "Someone's going to get hurt if you don't turn around right now. 7 guns to your 2, one of the hired men observed. "Not good odds, friend." "Maybe not," Thatcher agreed. "But I'll drop at least 3 of you before I go down. Starting with your boss. Any of you boys willing to die for his domestic troubles?" A slight shift in the group. Hired guns calculating pay versus risk. Charles sensed it, face flushing. "I'll pay double to the man who brings her out." "Triple," another voice said, and Sheriff Morrison rode into view with 4 deputies. "That's what it'll cost in bail when I arrest you for attempted kidnapping." "Sheriff," Charles's smile was forced. "I'm simply retrieving my wife." "What wife?" "Only Mrs. Boone here, and her husband seems right opposed to her going anywhere." Morrison positioned his men strategically. "Now, you can ride out peaceful, or we can discuss this in my jail. Your choice." For a long moment, violence trembled in the air like heat shimmer. Then Charles yanked his horse around. "This isn't over," he snarled. "I have lawyers, connections, and I have a town full of witnesses who'll swear Evelyn Granger died of fever on a train last spring," Morrison said mildly. "Tragic loss. We even have a grave marker if you'd like to pay your respects." Charles went white, then red. "You can't what? Can't protect our own from Eastern carpetbaggers who think money buys everything?" Morrison's folksy manner dropped. "Mister, you're in Wyoming now. We do things different here." After another tense moment, Charles spurred his horse viciously. His men followed, though one looked back with something like apology. They watched until the dust settled. Then Morrison turned to Thatcher. "He'll be back. Men like that don't take no for an answer." "I know." Thatcher hadn't lowered his rifle. "Thanks for the backup. Thank Clara. She came flying into town, said trouble was heading your way." Morrison touched his hat to Evelyn, who had emerged onto the porch. "Ma'am, you all right?" "Yes." Her voice was steady, though she gripped Thatcher's arm tight. "Sheriff, what you said about Evelyn Granger dying? Oh, that, well, it's true enough. The woman who was Evelyn Granger, who lived in fear and bondage, she did die on that train. Woman standing here is Evelyn Boone, free citizen of Wyoming." He gathered his reins. "I'll post a man to watch the roads, but Boone, if I were you—" "I know, be ready." After the lawmen left, Evelyn sank onto the porch steps, shaking now that the immediate danger had passed. Thatcher sat beside her, pulling her close. "You stood up to him," he said quietly, spoke right out. "I've been running so long, I forgot I could fight back." She turned her face into his shoulder. "When I saw him, I thought I'd be terrified, but mostly I was angry. How dare he come here, to our home?" "That's my girl." He kissed her temple. "But Morrison's right. He'll try again. Then we'll be ready." She straightened, steel in her spine. "I'm done running. Thatcher, this is my home. You're my husband. If Charles wants a fight, he'll get one." They spent the evening preparing, checking weapons, securing the stock, planning defensive positions. But when night fell, Thatcher found Evelyn standing at their bedroom window, staring into the darkness. "What is it?" "I keep thinking about Catherine Mills, the real one." She touched the glass. "She was so excited about her new life. She showed me your letters, talked about the adventure waiting for her. Then the fever took her so fast, and she gave you her chance. But did I steal it? Am I living a life that should have been hers?" Thatcher turned her to face him. "You're living the life you've made. Catherine's death was tragic, but it wasn't your fault. And I'd bet anything she'd be glad to know her dream helped save someone else." "You really think so?" "I know so. Because the woman I fell in love with would never have survived as a transaction. She needed to come here as herself, even if she had to borrow a name to do it." They made love that night with desperate tenderness, each touch an affirmation against the darkness pressing in. Afterward, Evelyn traced the scars on his back, her own marks of survival meeting his. "Whatever happens," she whispered, "I regret nothing. These months with you have been worth everything. Don't talk like that, like we're already lost. We're not lost. We're found." She kissed him softly. "But if the worst happens, it won't." His arms tightened around her. "I failed Martha. I won't fail you. You didn't fail anyone. You survived. We both did. And now we get to live." Dawn came too soon, bringing new challenges. Charles had taken rooms in town, his presence poisoning the atmosphere. He hired Emmett Walsh to dig up dirt, spread rumors, offered bribes for information about the woman claiming to be Catherine Mills. But the town closed ranks. Mrs. Morrison declared loudly that she'd known Dear Catherine from the moment she'd arrived. Clara produced letters allegedly from Pittsburgh relatives. Even crusty old Samuel at the post office swore he remembered Catherine Mills collecting mail for months before the wedding. The standoff lasted 3 days. Then, on a clear Thursday morning, violence erupted in the worst possible way. Thatcher had ridden to town for supplies, leaving Evelyn safe, he thought, with Clara visiting. But Charles had been watching, waiting. No sooner had Thatcher disappeared over the ridge than riders approached the house. Clara saw them first. "Evelyn, run! Out the back!" But they'd already surrounded the house. Charles entered through the front door like he owned it, 2 men flanking him. "There you are, darling. Time to come home." Evelyn stood her ground, though her heart hammered. "I'm not going anywhere with you." "Oh, but you are." He nodded to his men, who grabbed Clara. "Unless you want your friend to suffer for your stubbornness, let her go. She has nothing to do with your lies, your adultery." Charles advanced on her, and for a moment she was back in Philadelphia, helpless against his rage. Then she remembered. She wasn't that woman anymore. The derringer Thatcher had given her was small, easily hidden in her skirt pocket. She pulled it out, aimed steady. "Let her go!" Charles laughed. "You won't shoot me. You don't have it in you. The woman you knew didn't, but she's dead. Remember?" Evelyn cocked the hammer. "I'm someone else now. Someone who'll protect what's hers." The standoff stretched taut. Then hoofbeats thundered outside. Thatcher, riding hard, having spotted the strange horses from the ridge. He burst through the door, took in the scene in an instant. "Release, Mrs. Boone," he said quietly, rifle trained on Charles. "Now." But Charles had shifted, using Clara as a shield. "Interesting situation. Your whore pointing a gun at me, you pointing one at my men. Someone's going to get hurt." "Yes," Thatcher agreed. "You." It happened fast. Charles shoved Clara aside, went for his own gun. Evelyn fired without thought, the derringer cracking sharp. Charles spun, clutching his shoulder, his shot going wild. His men, seeing their meal ticket down, made the smart choice and raised their hands. "Nobody move!" Morrison's voice, the sheriff and his deputies flooding in, having followed Thatcher from town. In the chaos that followed, Charles cursing and bleeding, his men arrested, statements given. Evelyn stood frozen, the tiny gun still in her hand. Thatcher gently took it from her, pulled her close. "You did what you had to," he murmured. "You saved Clara, yourself, maybe me." "I shot him." Her voice was wondering. "I actually shot him." "And a damn fine shot it was," Clara said shakily, straightening her skirts. "Though you might have done the world a favor aiming a bit more center." Morrison approached, notebook in hand. "I'll need statements, but looks clear enough. Self-defense, protection of others. Mr. Pemberton here was armed and threatening violence in your home." Charles, being bandaged by a deputy, snarled. "She's my wife. I have every right to get shot breaking into another man's home and threatening his family?" Morrison shook his head. "Don't think Judge Palmer will see it that way." As they led Charles away, still protesting, he locked eyes with Evelyn one last time. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is," she said quietly. You have no power over me anymore. I'm not afraid of you." And standing there in her kitchen, surrounded by friends and protected by the law of this wild land that had become home, she realized it was true. The frightened girl who'd fled Philadelphia was gone. In her place stood Evelyn Boone, wife, fighter, and finally, truly free. The courthouse filled to capacity on the day of the hearing. Word had spread through 3 counties. A dramatic showdown between Eastern money and Western justice. Women who'd never attended a legal proceeding in their lives packed the gallery. Faces set in determination. Judge Palmer, a stern man with silver whiskers, surveyed the crowd with resignation. "This is a hearing, not a circus. Anyone who can't maintain order will be removed." Charles sat at the plaintiff's table, his arm in a sling, flanked by 2 lawyers brought from Denver. His eyes never left Evelyn, who sat beside Thatcher, wearing her best dress and Martha's locket. "Your Honor," the lead lawyer began, "a thin man named Whitman. We're here to address a simple matter of property rights. Mrs. Evelyn Pemberton abandoned her lawful husband and is living in an adulterous relationship under an assumed name." Objection. Morrison stood. Having volunteered to represent the Boones, "The defendant's name is Evelyn Boone, lawfully married in this very courthouse." "A fraudulent marriage," Whitman declared. "She was already wed." "Can you prove that?" Morrison challenged. "Do you have documentation that Evelyn Granger and Evelyn Boone are the same person?" Whitman produced papers with a flourish. Marriage certificate from Philadelphia, signed by Evelyn Granger and Charles Pemberton, testimony from household staff, a photograph of Evelyn Granger, who I'm told died tragically of fever last spring. Morrison interrupted. "Unless you can prove this woman is her," the legal maneuvering continued. But Palmer raised a hand. "I'll hear from the defendant herself. Mrs. Boone, please take the stand." Evelyn rose on unsteady legs, Thatcher's hand briefly covering hers. She took the oath and sat, chin high despite her racing heart. "State your name for the record," Palmer instructed. "Evelyn Grace Boone." "Mrs. Boone, Mr. Pemberton claims you're his wife. What say you?" She met Charles's gaze steadily. "I say that Evelyn Granger died the night she fled Philadelphia. What emerged was someone else, someone who chose her own path." "That's not an answer," Whitman objected. "Isn't it?" Evelyn turned to the judge. "Your Honor, I could tell you about the marriage, Mr. Pemberton speaks about what happened behind closed doors, about why a woman might choose to die to herself rather than continue living that life. Hysteria and lies." Charles muttered. "Then let me ask the women here." Evelyn addressed the gallery. "How many of you have known a marriage that looked perfect from outside but was torment within? How many have seen bruises hidden by high collars, tears explained away as feminine weakness?" A murmur ran through the crowd. Several women nodded, faces grim with recognition. "Your Honor," Whitman protested, "this emotional appeal has bearing," Palmer ruled. "Continue, Mrs. Boone." "They say I abandoned my husband. I say I escaped my captor. They say I'm living in adultery. I say I'm living in my first real marriage, one built on choice, not transaction, on love, not fear." Pretty words. Charles spoke up, ignoring his lawyer's restraining hand. "But the law is clear. A wife belongs to her husband." "Does she?" Clara stood in the gallery. "Judge, may I speak?" Palmer sighed. "This is highly irregular. So is a man tracking a woman across half the country to drag her back to misery." Clara said firmly, "I've known Evelyn Boone since she arrived. She's been nothing but honest, hard-working, and devoted to her husband, her real husband." "She's a fraud," Charles began. "I'll tell you what's fraud." Another woman stood. "Mrs. Morrison. A marriage that's nothing but legal slavery. We came west for freedom. Judge, don't let Eastern chains follow us here." One by one, women throughout the gallery stood. The banker's wife, the minister's daughter, even Emmett Walsh's long-suffering spouse. silent testimony to solidarity that transcended class and background. Palmer pounded his gavel. "Order, sit down, all of you," but his eyes had softened slightly. "Mr. Pemberton, do you have proof that this woman is Evelyn Granger? Not circumstantial evidence, real proof?" Whitman shuffled papers. "The resemblance is clear. Lots of women have honey-colored hair and gray eyes," Morrison observed. "Unless you have something more concrete." "She admitted it," Charles burst out. "In front of witnesses, she admitted fleeing Philadelphia." "I admitted no such thing," Evelyn said calmly. "I spoke of why a woman might flee. If you saw yourself in that description, perhaps that says more about you than me." "Your Honor," Thatcher spoke for the first time, standing. "May I address the court?" Palmer nodded, and Thatcher moved to stand beside his wife. "I'm a simple man, don't know much about law beyond what's right and wrong. But I know this. The woman beside me is my wife, legal and true. We spoke our vows honest. Whatever name she carried before, whoever she might have been, she's Evelyn Boone now. And in Wyoming, we protect our own." "Are you threatening?" Whitman began. "I'm stating fact." Thatcher's voice carried quiet authority. "This woman saved my life, not from bullets, but from becoming a ghost myself. She brought light back to a dark place. If that's crime, then judge us guilty. But I'll die before I let anyone drag her back to darkness." The gallery erupted in approval before Palmer could gavel them quiet. When order restored, the judge looked between the parties, decision weighing on his weathered face. "Mr. Whitman, Mr. Pemberton, you've presented your case. However, I find insufficient evidence to prove that Evelyn Boone and Evelyn Granger are the same person. Without such proof, I cannot nullify a legal Wyoming marriage." "This is outrageous," Charles shot to his feet. "She's my property." "Sir," Palmer's gavel cracked like a gunshot. "No human being is property, not in this territory. Furthermore, given your admitted violence in this community, including breaking into the Boone residence and threatening citizens, you're hereby ordered to leave Wyoming within 48 hours. You can't, I can, and I have. Any further harassment of Mrs. Boone will result in immediate arrest. Case dismissed." The gallery erupted. Women surged forward to embrace Evelyn, who stood stunned as the reality sank in. She was free. Truly, legally free. Charles pushed through the crowd, his face twisted with rage. He grabbed Evelyn's arm, yanking her close. "This isn't over. You're mine. You'll always be—" Thatcher's fist connected with Charles's jaw, sending him sprawling. "Touch my wife again, and court order will be the least of your worries." Morrison and his deputies quickly intervened, hauling Charles away as he spewed threats. The crowd parted, women's faces hard as flint as they watched him go. That night, the Boone Ranch overflowed with neighbors celebrating. Women who'd barely spoken to Evelyn before embraced her like a sister. Men shook Thatcher's hand, welcoming him back to the community he'd isolated himself from. "You did it," Clara said, hugging Evelyn tight. "You stood up in that court and told your truth. We all did," Evelyn replied, eyes misting as she looked at the gathered women. "I've never felt so supported." "That's what we do here, Mrs., Morrison said firmly. "We look after each other. Eastern ladies might suffer in silence, but Western women fight back." As the evening wound down and guests departed, Evelyn found herself on the porch with Thatcher, watching stars emerge above the canyon. The weight that had pressed on her for months, years, had lifted, leaving her feeling strangely light. "It's over," she murmured. "Really over." "That paper in Palmer's court says so," Thatcher agreed, pulling her close. "But more than that, you faced him, spoke your truth. That took more courage than any gunfight. I couldn't have done it without you, without everyone." "Maybe not, but the strength was yours." He kissed her temple. "The woman who stood in that courtroom today, that's who you really are, who you were always meant to be." She turned in his arms, studying his face in the lamplight. "Do you know what Charles never understood? He thought fear was power. But real power is choosing love despite the fear, building something new from ashes. Like we did. Like we're doing, she corrected, placing his hand over her still flat belly. Thatcher, I have something to tell you. His eyes widened as understanding dawned. Evelyn, are you? I am. She smiled through happy tears. Come spring, this house will have new life in it again. He swept her up, spinning her around as she laughed, free and joyous. When he set her down, his eyes were wet too. A baby, he said wonderingly. Our baby, our future. She agreed. The final proof that the past has no claim on us anymore. They stood together as night deepened, two souls who'd found each other across loss and lies, who'd built truth from desperate deception. In the morning, Charles Pemberton would leave Wyoming forever, his legal claims and violent controls shattered by frontier justice and feminine solidarity. But tonight, Thatcher and Evelyn Boone held each other beneath vast western stars, dreaming of the child who would know only love, only freedom, only the wide-open possibilities of a life chosen rather than imposed. The ghost of Evelyn Granger was finally, truly laid to rest. In her place stood a woman reborn, wife, fighter, and soon, mother. The transformation was complete, witnessed by law and community, sealed by courage and consecrated by love. The West had made her its own, and she had claimed it in return, writing a new story with every sunrise over the Red Rock Canyon she now called home. Snow blanketed the canyon on the day Grace Martha Boone came into the world, screaming with the fierce vitality of a child born to freedom. The midwife, Mrs. Morrison, declared her the loudest baby she'd delivered in 20 years. Takes after her mother, she said approvingly. This one won't be silenced by anyone. Evelyn, exhausted but radiant, cradled her daughter while Thatcher looked on with wonder that hadn't dimmed since the moment he'd first felt the baby kick. Grace for the gift she is, Evelyn murmured, tracing the infant's perfect features. Martha for the woman who loved you first and would have loved her too. Thatcher's eyes misted. She would have... God, how she would have loved this, all of this. The winter passed in a blur of feedings and first smiles, of sleepless nights made bearable by shared joy. The ranch thrived under their partnership. Evelyn managed the books and household while Thatcher expanded their holdings. Come spring, they had enough saved to hire help and add 2 rooms to the cabin, one golden afternoon, as Evelyn hung laundry while Grace napped in a basket nearby. A lone rider approached. Her hand went instinctively to the rifle propped against the porch, then relaxed as she recognized the traveler, a woman, dusty from long travel. Mrs. Boone. The woman dismounted, revealing a face marked by weariness and resolve. I'm Helen Mills, Catherine's sister. Evelyn's heart stopped. After all this time, when she'd begun to believe the past truly buried. I know who you are, Helen continued quietly. Or rather, who you're not. Kate wrote me about meeting you on the train, about being sick, her last letter. She pulled out a worn envelope. She told me if anything happened, I should find the woman who'd been kind to her, with trembling hands. Evelyn took the letter. Catherine's spidery handwriting filled the page. Dearest Helen, the fever grows worse, but my spirit is light. I've met a woman on this journey who reminds me that courage takes many forms. If God calls me home before I reach Wyoming, know that my papers and dreams go to one who needs them more. She promises to write you when she's safe. I pray she finds the happiness we both sought. Your loving sister, Kate. Tears blurred Evelyn's vision. I meant to write, but when the trouble started, I understand. Helen stepped closer, studying Evelyn's face. You've built something beautiful here. Kate would be so pleased. I've felt guilty every day. Living her dream. No. Helen's voice was firm. You're living your own dream. Kate just opened the door. She smiled, gesturing to the baby. May I? Evelyn lifted Grace, who gurgled happily at the attention. Helen's face softened. A new generation, born free, that's what we all wanted. Coming west. They talked through the afternoon. Helen sharing stories of Catherine's childhood. Evelyn describing the life she'd built. When Thatcher returned from the range, he found them laughing over coffee like old friends. "My husband, Thatcher," Evelyn introduced, seeing his wary stance. "This is Helen Mills, Catherine's sister." Understanding and concern flickered across his face, but Helen quickly reassured him. "I've come to put the past to rest. Mr. Boone, not disturb your present." She stood to leave. "I'll stay in town tonight. Head back to Colorado tomorrow." "Stay here," Evelyn said impulsively. "Please, there's so much more I want to tell you about how your sister saved me." That evening, as Grace slept peacefully, the three adults sat before the fire. Evelyn finally told her whole story, not the careful version she'd shared in court, but the raw truth of desperation and deliverance. She was already fading when she pressed those papers into my hands. Evelyn concluded, but her eyes were so clear, so insistent. "Take them," she said. "Take my chance and make it yours." Helen wiped her eyes. "That sounds like Kate, always trying to help others, even at the end." "I've tried to honor her," Evelyn said softly, "to build something worthy of her sacrifice." "You have." Helen looked around the comfortable room, at the baby sleeping in her cradle, at the obvious love between husband and wife. This is exactly what she dreamed of. A real home, a partnership, children. You're living it for both of you. The next morning, Helen prepared to leave. At the gate, she turned back. "Evelyn, may I call you that? Will you write me sometimes? Tell me about Grace, about your life? It would comfort me to know Kate's kindness continues to bear fruit." "Of course." Evelyn embraced her. "You'll always be welcome here. Grace should know about the brave woman who made her life possible." After Helen's departure, life settled into new rhythms. The ranch prospered, and their reputation in the community solidified. Evelyn became known for taking in women who needed shelter, a night, a week, however long it took to find their feet. The spare room stood ready for those fleeing their own versions of Charles Pemberton. "You're building quite the reputation," Clara observed one day, watching Evelyn help a young woman whose husband had abandoned her with 3 children. "The angel of the canyon, they're calling you in town." Evelyn laughed. "Hardly an angel, just someone who remembers what it's like to have nowhere to turn." As Grace grew from baby to toddler, her personality emerged, fearless like her father, compassionate like her mother. She toddled after Thatcher as he worked, chattering in half-words only she understood. Evenings found the family together. Grace on Thatcher's lap as Evelyn read aloud from precious books ordered from Denver on their 3rd wedding anniversary. Thatcher surprised Evelyn with a trip to the spot where they'd sheltered from the storm years before. The old line shack had been transformed into a proper cabin, complete with windows overlooking the valley. "For when we need to remember," he said simply, "where it really began." She kissed him, long and deep, tasting gratitude and love in equal measure. "Every day with you is a new beginning." That summer brought a letter that Evelyn had long expected but still dreaded. Charles Pemberton had died. A heart attack, the lawyer wrote, brought on by years of dissolution and rage. His estate was in chaos, but surprisingly, he'd never changed his will. "Everything went to my lawful wife, Evelyn." Evelyn stared at the letter, feelings too complex to name swirling through her. Thatcher read over her shoulder, then gently took the papers. "What do you want to do?" She thought of the girl she'd been, terrorized and trapped, of the woman she'd become, free and flourishing. "Helen Mills has 3 daughters. Catherine dreamed of helping them get educated." She smiled. Decision made. "I'll have the lawyer sell everything, send the money to Helen, let something good come from all that pain. You could claim it. Legally, you were. I was never his wife. Not truly." She touched her wedding ring, the simple band Thatcher had placed there with shaking hands. "This is my only marriage. You are my only husband." As autumn painted the canyon in shades of gold and scarlet, Evelyn stood in the garden Catherine had never seen but somehow helped create. Grace played at her feet, building castles from dirt and dreams. Inside, She could hear Thatcher working on a new cradle. Their second child would arrive with the spring. The woman who'd stepped off the train that long ago April had been running from death. The woman who stood here now was running toward life. Abundant, joy-filled, chosen. A hawk circled overhead. Riding thermals up the canyon walls, Evelyn shaded her eyes to watch it soar, remembering another frightened creature who'd learned to fly. "Mama, look!" Grace held up a particularly fine mud creation. "House. Beautiful. Darling." Evelyn knelt beside her daughter, adding a stick chimney to the structure. Every home needs a strong foundation. As the sun set behind the red rocks, painting the world in shades of rose and gold, Evelyn gathered Grace and went inside to start supper. Thatcher would be home soon, hungry for food and the simple pleasure of their evening together. The table she set bore no resemblance to the formal arrangements of her Philadelphia life. Here was warmth instead of elegance, laughter instead of silence, love instead of fear. Every plate, every carefully mended cloth, every wildflower in a mason jar spoke of a life built on truth rather than pretense. When Thatcher arrived, lifting Grace high as she squealed with delight, Evelyn watched them with a full heart. The frightened girl named Evelyn Granger had indeed died on that westbound train, but from her ashes had risen Evelyn Boone, wife, mother, survivor, and finally, triumphantly, herself. The Wyoming wind sang through the canyon, carrying wood smoke and the promise of snow. Inside the lamplit cabin, a family sat down to supper, heads bowed in gratitude for food, for shelter, for the miracle of second chances. And in that moment, with her husband's hand warm in hers and their daughter's laughter filling the air, Evelyn knew that every lie had led to this truth, every sorrow to this joy. The mail-order bride who never was had become something infinitely more precious. A woman who had chosen her own destiny and found it sweeter than any dream. The story that began with deception had become, at last, the truest tale of all. Two broken people who'd helped each other heal, who'd built from ashes a love strong enough to last through whatever storms might come. In the Red Rock Canyon of Wyoming, where the wind sang freedom and the stars witnessed transformation, the Boone family faced their future together, whole, hopeful, and home. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the Wild West and witnessing Evelyn and Thatcher's incredible story of love, courage, and redemption. If you enjoyed this tale of second chances and frontier justice, I'd love to hear from you. Please drop a comment below and let me know where in the world you're listening from. It's amazing to connect with fellow lovers of Western romance across the globe. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more stories of passion and adventure on the American frontier. And share your thoughts about Evelyn and Thatcher's journey. Did their love story touch your heart as much as it touched mine? Let me know in the comments below.